garden is a very visceral message. It's like a demolished house, basically. The idea is that it's sort of a strong metaphor for being displaced and uprooted. And we've got a big silver birch tree that's been uprooted and fallen down. So very strong metaphors. And we've got the weeds and a mixture of ornamentals as well. So it's showing how nature is sort of healing the wounds. I spent my teenage years in Porlock in Somerset. Fantastic. We had Exmoor as our backyard, and the sea, the Bristol Channel and everything.
There's a little broom called Porlock, isn't there?
A broom?
Yeah, plant, broom. And it's called
see,
Porlock.
I thought you meant a broom.
No, Cytisis, I think.
Hello and welcome to a Happy New Year edition of Talking Dirty over at East Ruston Old Vicarage in a rather marvellous sort of lemony limey chartreuse sweater that I am having some sweater FOMO about is Alan Edward Herbert Gray, our happy and very handsome horticulturalist.
And on this lovely sunny morning, squirreled away in Cambridgeshire, beaming and blooming, more of that later, we have Thordis Maria Sophia Fredriksson. How are you?
I am very, very well. We've had a wonderful Christmas over here, wonderful gifts and food and merriment, and I suppose I should get the announcement out of the way. People have probably seen on my Instagram over at Thunder Fairy that there is a reason we were making the most of our adult sort of Christmas, because next year it's going to be rather more chaotic. Should I stand up? I've been hiding this.
Yeah, good idea.
I've been hiding it for some time, but if you're listening to the audio version, my stomach is rather rounder than it once was. I mean, it's quite round anyway, to be honest. But now it's round because there is a tiny human in there.
Judging from what you said, I mean, we've got a very busy little person in there.
Very busy. And this is going to be a very active undergardener. That is the hope. I'm going to get them digging, sowing, everything. So they'll
just you wait.
Yeah, they might end up hating gardening, but we'll try our best to get them early on. We don't know whether it's a boy or a girl. So watch this space. Sometime in March, all will be revealed, and we'll keep the podcast going as long as possible. And then I'll have a little gap while I figure out how to parent, how to raise a small person, and then we'll be back. So that's the plan.
Actually, a silly thing to say probably, but it must be very daunting. The closer it gets, it must be quite daunting, really.
Yeah, it's bizarre because obviously there's quite a present thing, both physically and in all the kinks going on in my body. And I still can't believe it's real, that there is this person that's going to arrive that I haven't met yet. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm sure that's how every first time parent feels. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting adventure, but I'm glad to share it. Finally.
Well, to quote your mummy, I think you will be a lovely mummy.
Well, thank you. Well, I hope so. I think it's going to have a worrying mummy, that's for sure. I'll try and keep that in check.
That's parenthood for you.
Now, it has been a lovely Christmas. We have lots of lovely gifts. I must say thank you very much for this rather marvellous crocodile-like houseplant. Actually, there's loads of dust coming off it. Houseplant accessory. This, if you watch the Dan Cooper Christmas special, is the houseplant cleaning brush. So you run it over the leaves of lovely things like this plant behind me. And the best thing about this is the other half loves it, quite likes cleaning. So he actually has used it more than I have since you bought it for me, Alan. But thank you very much.
There you go, see. I mean, it's one of those things that people look at and think, what the heck is that?
I think I can have some fun with baby. This is like some sort of big chomping set of teeth.
It's the kind of thing that you think is everything you didn't know you couldn't live without. Well, you can't live without that once you've had it, because, it's absolutely superb for leaves. And I mean, dear old Dan Cooper, or young Dan Cooper, we did lots of things with him this Christmas, including Christmas decorations, of course, which I know you did as well. And so we had, I think my favourite probably was the greenhouse, which he gifted me when he came to the plant fair, which I thought was very kind of him. But it inspired me to go back and buy a Brussels sprout and a pea pod with peas in it, a pair of Wellington boots, a pair of secateurs.
Wellington all these boots are marvellous as well.
Yeah. But they're all sort of garden inspired, which I think is rather lovely. Now we have a separate little tree in our morning room, which is down now, because although I love Christmas and I love the idea of decorating for Christmas, the moment December is gone, I want Christmas gone as well, because somehow or other I'm looking forward. It's the new year, the new me, the new this, and especially if you've been feeling a little bit under the weather over Christmas, and I had. I'm afraid Graham and I both had whatever kind of lurgy it was. I think it was more flu than anything else. You can probably hear it's still a bit on the edge, but it is gone. I'm feeling much more bouncy than I was 3 days ago, so that's something.
You seem very bouncy. I would have thought, I hope you didn't lose your ability to smell over your lurgy, because just before Christmas, talking of Dan, he sent us these beautiful scented narcissi from the Isles of Scilly, which was such an unexpected treat. And they just filled my tiny house with their scent. I'd come down in the morning and the whole downstairs was just sort of sparkling the air, almost like to your nostrils, with this wonderful, unmistakable scent.
Well, there were two things I did with mine. I had a small vase full of them and nothing else, and just some green ivy leaves in the back hall, which meant every time you came through the back hall, you whiff, the waft was lovely. And then very kindly, Gilbert, who used to work for us years ago, he's long retired now, he always drops by at Christmas time with a few goodies that his wife Joan makes. And he always puts a bunch of chrysanthemums in, which he'd managed to do this year again. So I had yellow chrysanthemums and the yellow and gold narcissus together. And I picked some leaves from an Arum called Miss Janay Hall, which has green and gold variegated leaves. And they went round like a collar. It looked absolutely lovely.
Oh, how beautiful. So thank you very much, Dan. We really, really enjoyed your gift. Alan is also one of the hardest people in the world to buy for.
You see, you did me a pocketbook of herbs. Look, you wouldn't believe how useful that is, because I've been thinking for a long time that there's what was the red and purple border, which is outside the orangery, the back of the house near our kitchen. And I've long been thinking of how and where I can grow herbs, culinary herbs. And in particular, I wanted to grow, I have two very tall chimney pots. They're as tall as me. And I wanted to grow a rosemary that I'd seen in Cornwall, I think it was, many years ago. And it was growing at the top of a retaining wall. And it just hung down just like tears, cat's tails. And it was so gorgeous. And I look in Jekka's herb book here, and Jekka is famous for her herbs, and as we all know, and there is a rosemary there, which is called Severn Seas, which she says is the one that I need. I think there may be others out there that I don't know of, but that's the one I'm going to go for. And I've decided not to use the chimney pots, because the dilemma comes when you have too many of one thing, kind of thing, I think. And if I got chimney pots, I've got to then think out where I put them. Do I sink them in the ground? Do I cement them into the ground? What do I do with them? Where do I put them? And I suddenly thought, well, with a little bit of forethought, I've got two large pots outside the orangery. They could have the weeping rosemary in them. They could then have a selection of pelargoniums, scented leaf pelargoniums, and anything else I like to put in them, perhaps some sage or something like that as well. And my tiered shelves between the two pots, they could contain my culinary herbs, again with a few pelargoniums. So, I now have I wouldn't say a herb garden per se, but I have my culinary herbs close at hand, exactly where I need them. When I just dash through there from the kitchen through there, and I've got them. So problem solved.
Ideas are forming. That was all it was, that little book, just to give you the odd bit of inspiration or remind you of a variety you'd forgotten or something.
It's amazing how important that inspiration is, because you only get it because if you're reading things, like reading a magazine article or reading a book or whatever, suddenly something will click in your mind and you'll think, hey, I could do so and so. So you put a new twist on that idea, and that book inspired me to do what I'm just told you. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad at least one of my funny little gifts could be useful. He is very hard to buy for, as I'm sure you can well imagine. The Christmas time itself, obviously you were a bit laid up feeling ill. You normally do a Christmas flower count. Before Christmas, certainly here in Cambridgeshire, it was like Siberia or something, and you got quite a lot of that as well. over on the East Coast, perhaps tempered because it always tends to be where you are. It's something we'll talk about more in the next episode, I think, because we recorded that when we were right in the midst of this awful, horrible sort of 10-day extended freeze. But did you have anything to see on Christmas Day? What had recovered?
Not very much, actually. Not very much. I mean, my flower count on Christmas Day is usually way over 100. In spite of the fact that we always try and get ahead by cutting lots of things back. But there are a few amazing things, I think. One was that I found as a shrub called Rhaphiolepis. It's an evergreen shrub, and it has little sort of flowers, either pale pink or white in bunches. Normally it blooms about April, May. It has a bunch of flowers on it, which is ridiculous. And, you know, I was looking at, I mean, there were no roses this year. They'd all been frosted. We had -4 in the garden here, which is unprecedented for us. That is very low indeed. And in fact, I did fear for some of the tree ferns. And although some of the fronds are scorched on the top, we didn't tie them up or anything. They're absolutely fine. Of course, there could well yet be a few deaths because of this, because, you know, sometimes a plant doesn't show the fact that it's been affected badly. It's only when it gets a month or two on from the frost that suddenly you realize, well, that's not looking as good as it should.
And it's been such a stressful year. So many of these plants have already gone through an extreme drought, and then they've had this big freeze. And certainly here it has rained so consistently since then. So whether or not some of them just...
You know, a good summer, a hot summer preceding a period of cold is a good thing, because hot sun ripens wood, and if the wood has ripened, it's much more likely to stand up to hard frost than if it's not. So a hot summer, the hot summer that we had, will have done some good in that respect.
You've just given me some hope, but I think I've probably lost quite a few things, not least my aeoniums. I tried so hard to give them shelter. I put them under cover. I doubly fleeced them, but I had no room. I have nowhere, especially the house full of baby stuff.
I put I put aeoniums and echeverias and things like that, and cacti, in an unheated greenhouse that we grow tomatoes and chilies in the summer. And I said it's unheated, and it really is unheated. And 1 or 2 of the echeverias have got some frost damage on them. I think they'll survive. Lots of the plants like cacti and things like that, they seem okay. But that's one of the plants that you often don't know. It's dying until it kind of rots from the inside out almost, you know, and it suddenly starts to shrink like a deflated balloon, and you think, oh, yeah, we've had it there. So we'll see. But I mean, you know.
And I didn't want to go around protecting things. And I was sort of trying to take this approach with my garden, particularly as we've had several mild winters, that I'd grow things that might not survive a hard winter and just hope we didn't have one. Obviously, we then have had this cold period. My Fuchsia procumbens, I'm fairly certain, is gone. It certainly doesn't look happy. My Euphorbia mellifera, I don't know if it's going to pull through, but it looks very sad at the minute, and I'll be close to devastated if I lose that, because it's such a focal point in my garden. But I don't know. Maybe it's going to be okay. I've never had one through a hard cold.
Look, I know these losses are hard to bear, but I think, you know, to kind of salve the feeling of loss, I think that you have to have an outlook that is quite philosophical about it. And, you know, should your beloved mellifera expire, well, then you'll do one or two things. You'll replace it, or you'll think to yourself, I'm not going to replace that because it died. I'll have something else.
I think it would be a good spot for a tree. So I think I will see it as an opportunity to put a tree in that corner of the garden. So it is hopeful, you know, if it dies, but I still love it. So I don't want it to die. And then Podophyllum spotty dotty, I'm just going to set up a little like vigil by it and pray over it, because it's in a container. So I worry that it was just too, like the roots were too cold. Which is sad, because it was really starting to get a bit bigger and look lovely. So never mind.
Lots of plants. I mean, we've got this lovely blue fern, which is called Phlebodium something or other. And I've had it outside now for years. It shouldn't be outside, I know. I mean, it's really quite tender, and it has these lovely sort of creeping feet that are like hairy paws, and they sort of march over the top of the soil. Well, I went and looked at them, and every glaucous grey-blue frond was brown, and I thought, oh well, they're dead. But the feet and the crowns are quite firm, so I'm hoping that it's just, you know, superficial damage, shall we say, and they will they will come again. But who knows? We'll have to see.
I'm so glad that this was the year I got into ferns, because lots of those are actually looking really good in the garden.
Yeah.
And I was worried when I bought Coniogramme emeiensis, that wonderful variegated fern, that it wouldn't be hardy. Everybody on Instagram said, it's fine, it's growing here in Glasgow, it's doing wonderfully well. So I had it, but it is in a container. Seems to be doing fabulously. So fingers crossed that really is as hardy as people had said. And then there are other things around the garden. My Eragrostis Totnes Burgundy is going all of these lovely ambery, peachy shades and lighting up my patio in the midst of death and destruction. So there are positives in the garden.
Exactly. There always are. I mean, this morning I looked out of my kitchen window and we've had this period of cold and there's been very little colour in the garden. And there's quite a big camellia underneath the trees outside my kitchen window. And this morning I looked and there were 6 flowers open on it. And that's because we've had three very mild days. You know, we're 14, 15 degrees here in the day. I mean, it's been ridiculous. Yeah. The day is not so warm. It's probably, what does it say on my computer? I'll tell you, it's 5 degrees. So it's not so warm today, but you know, 6 blooms on a camellia, and it lifts the heart. Now, if we get some hard frost again, of course, they'll die. But the great thing is about lots of winter flowering plants is that they don't open all their flowers together. So if they open a few and then they get frosted, then we get good weather again, they'll open a few more. And so on and so forth. So that happens. So it's, you know, not all is lost.
And there's so much excitement ahead, not just in my belly. That's very exciting. But I've been peering at the new raised bed that I built last spring. And I was very worried about my snowdrops because of the drought. And I tried to keep the raised bed moist, but it just kept drying out. But lots of them, I haven't necessarily seen all of them, but lots of them are coming back.
Yeah.
And I'm just chuffed to bits that I might actually have a little bit of a snowdrop collection coming back this year, and I've planted the ferns and arums and things around them, so hopefully that should be really exciting. And also I treated myself this year to some Harvington plug hellebores, so the little baby hellebores they send out, and I don't actually know, I've never grown them from that small before. I don't know how long they will take to show their colours, but I do have a lovely selection of a double green speckled, a single yellow with golden nectaries, a single smoky blue, and a single yellow with a dark eye, which I am very excited about. So I can't wait to see those, and a couple of erythroniums as well from Harvington. So
well, one thing about Harvingtons is, first of all, I love their packaging. It's all string and brown paper, and it's absolutely lovely, isn't it? And secondly, the hellebores that are sent out are just itching to grow. It's not like something that's been kept in a pot probably a little bit too long and got pot bound. I mean, they're just itching to grow. And I think that is one of the best ways of buying hellebores. And I sat and did a list the other day from them, actually. And pretty much all the things that you just said, it's crazy, isn't it? That was on the days when I started to feel better.
Well, there's a nice thing. If you are feeling grim or the weather is grim, this is such an exciting time to look through seed lists and figure out what you may or may not be able to grow this year. We'll come on to that with our Flomo.
Yeah.
Particularly because I've got this quarter plot, my new little allotment, which is obviously quite hard work, considering that I'm just getting bigger and bigger and less able to do anything. But still, I'm going to try and be realistic and probably not grow too much from seed this year. She says, having already built up quite a list of things I want to buy to grow from seed. So we'll see.
You know what you need to do. And if I'd thought of this, we could have done something for Christmas, couldn't we? But maybe we'll have to sort of think about early birthday presents or something like that. But I mean, if you're finding it difficult to bend, I mean, you need long-handled tools like. You know, well, you do. I mean, it is an actual fact. It does work, you know, like a hose, and generally long-handled anyway. But I mean, like a little gardening fork on the end, or one of the most simple tools that I have on a long is what I call a spud. My grandfather had one. It's called a spud. It's like a miniature spade blade on the end. He used to have it on the end of his walking stick. And if he could dig it underneath the dandelion, cut the taproot, dandelion gone, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there are ways.
Yeah, baby agrees. I just got a reinforcing kick over here on the right. So endorsement from baby. I am excited for the allotment. I really need to sit down now and be sensible about how I use my little quarter plot and what I do with it. What about you for 2023? What are you excited for?
Well, we had a major event in that we moved the so-called Matterhorn, but I didn't realise just how much soil there was there, and we haven't quite moved it all. But Johnny came in with his mini digger, and we had two guys with dumper trucks, and they had to put things over the tracks over the grass so it didn't spoil it too much. Even so, there's devastation, Thordis. You think heavy machinery in gardens just don't go together. They really don't. Anyway, I mean, that will come good. I'm not worried about that. But the Matterhorn has allowed us to extend the desert wash in a way into the cornfield with bumps, buns, banks, whatever you like to call them,
Buns, I like that.
Yeah, yeah, well, you would. So I got there and I think, yes, you're pregnant. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're trying to sort of you lose the feel of the desert wash, if you like, and go mainly into sort of arid type planting. So it will be interesting. We'll see how it goes. But I'm quite pleased with it, and I love to have a new project on the go. You see, that's the thing. As long as you don't end up neglecting everything else. But
well, tell me about it. And obviously the desert wash is Graham's baby, and all of those agaves and things are his foremost love apart from you. And this new area, is that something that he is allowing you to lead on? Is it very much a 50-50?
It's kind of 50-50, I would say, because I wouldn't plant anything in that area and without consulting him. I wouldn't just go out there with a whole load of plants. Oh yeah, well, I thought I'd put those in here because I don't think that's fair, and I wouldn't want him to do it in an area of the garden I was working on either. So no, I would consult him about it. And out of that consultation will come other ideas, because you will bounce off one another. So whatever he says to start with, I will say, yes, but if, yes, but what if, and that kind of thing. And then you refine the idea, so you get at the end a better result, I think.
Yeah.
At least, life's a series of compromises, remember.
And the desert wash is just looking amazing. It's been looking amazing, more and more amazing.
The one thing, of course, in there that we did wrap were the flower heads on Agave montana.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you've never seen anything quite so stupid in your life, really, but we had very long bamboo canes, one of us on each end, and we sort of hoisted a piece of fleece over and draped it delicately, and then we'd had to move around and drape another piece over the other way, and then another piece, and so it had 4 layers of fleece on it. I just hope that it will be, it's come through the cold weather and we'll be fine, but we shall see. I mean, that would be devastating to Graham, I think, if it lost its flower buds, because that's what they are at the moment. The flower won't open until it is 2023 now, isn't it? until probably June or July, maybe. It will depend on the warmth and the climate. But he would be devastated if we lost it. Me, nah.
Such a pragmatist.
I would be disappointed, but I mean, I wouldn't let it ruin my day. I mean, I would just think, well, maybe next time.
We have other, though, isn't it? The one winter when you really could do with it being mild to get those flower spikes through.
Yes, but I can remember. I mean, if we go back to 2009-10, that was where we had the beast from the east. Was it or something? No, it was after that. That was the last really cold winter, and we had -2 here, and I thought that was cold. And a lot of it depends on how much wind you get. I mean, if you get a wind frost at -2, it can be worse than having -4 in the still night. So, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got a low temperature, -2 or -4, but if you've got wind with it as well, it'd be extra devastating. Yeah. So, I mean, our bananas are still standing, put it that way.
Well, I didn't measure the temperature in my garden. I should have done. I was a bit frightened. But over at the Cambridge University Botanic Garden, which isn't all that far away, and hopefully in a very exposed area, but it was -15 at its lowest, which is a terrifyingly low temperature.
Yes, it is. It is terrifyingly cold. You're right.
Fingers crossed it didn't do that too much in my little sheltered garden. So 2023, full of many exciting things, plants and otherwise. I suppose we should fit in some Flomo before we wrap up this little sort of bonus first edition of the year. I have been trying so hard to not get sucked into seed lists and things. It isn't really working. With the quarter plot at the allotment, I figure I can get away with a few things, and I really want to do sweet peas well. I've had, dalliances of sweet peas, but I don't have the place I want to put them in my garden really, whereas I can hopefully...
I've got a tale about sweet peas. At the end of the season in September, Eric and Wendy, who have frequent season ticket holders, frequent garden visitors, in fact, we have tea with them normally on a Friday afternoon, they came along and Eric handed me an envelope full of sweet pea seeds, masses of sweet pea seeds. And I was determined to plant some before Christmas in the autumn, and I didn't, needless to say. And then I suddenly thought, where did I put those sweet pea seeds? And I could remember thinking, now I've got to put them somewhere safe. Well, was coming. And I couldn't find them. And Eric said to me, if there's not enough there, I've got loads more you can have. Anyway, I felt too shamefaced to go back and say to Eric, please, can I have some more? So I kept stum. And I was clearing out one of the benches in the greenhouse on one of the days around Christmas time. And there was an envelope gradually falling to pieces. And all these little seedlings got popped, starting to grow on them. And I just thought, that's Eric's sweet peas. So I hastily potted some. And I left them on a trolley in the greenhouse, a metal trolley, and I thought they'll be safe there for the night. And overnight, mice descended. Yeah, not all was lost. So we did something about it. I won't go into what we did. Shall we say the mice are residing far away now? 3 of them. They went for a serious car journey. Anyway, so that was my story with the sweet pea seeds. So hopefully I will have some sweet pea seeds and sweet peas from Eric's bounteous collection. But I'm afraid the mice did get some of them.
Yeah, I had similarly meant to plant some earlier, and I very rarely remember to do that. I think one year I did, just that one.
Well, sweet peas are a funny thing, aren't they? Really, it depends what what you like. I know that Libby Ellis, she lives in North Norfolk and has a wonderful garden with her husband Robin, and they always Libby always tries to have sweet peas in flower for the Chelsea Flower Show, which is around about May the 20th. And I mean, she goes to hell and high water to get a bunch of sweet peas in the house for the Chelsea Flower Show that she's grown, even growing them in tunnels and things like that. But I think that probably if you sow your sweet peas in the autumn, you probably get them a fortnight earlier, maybe. That's probably all there is in it. And when 2 weeks out of 52, does it matter? However, having said that, I don't think summer's arrived until I picked my first bunch of sweet peas. No. That scent is just so evocative of summer for me.
And I saw a Lathyrus odoratus Juliet, which is supposed to have this heady citrus scent, which is sort of not probably quite unparalleled, but is certainly up there with the best. And it's very unlike me, Juliet. It's a creamy ivory thing. It does have an apricot-y blush to the petals. But I thought it would be a really great accompaniment to other things that I picked from the allotment. And other sweet peas, I have lots of pea seeds which are either collected from my garden, or they're very bright and brash, or purples and oranges and things, because that's what I like. And I thought maybe actually a really scented ivory kind of coloured sweet pea would be a good accompaniment to those. Whether or not I then have to go and get Romeo, I don't know, to grow the pair. So that was something. And I really want to have a nice collection of sunflowers, and I've got quite a few sunflower seeds already from previous dalliances of sunflowers that I can put at the allotment. But I saw new on the Chiltern list this year, one called Gummy Bear. And I do love a double sunflower. I'll have plenty of singles, I'm sure, but I love a multi-headed sunflower and I love a double. And this is a very double pale lemon yellow with branching stems to about 4 feet, which just looked extremely enticing and very cuddly.
I can understand your fascination with sunflowers, and I think it's lovely. But there is a lovely sweet pea called Prince of Orange, which you would love, I think.
That does sound right up my street.
Yeah. And there is another one which I can't remember the name of, but it's an old-fashioned variety. And if you go to if you look on somebody, I mean, Chiltern Seeds normally have it, but Roger Parsons Sweet Peas, I mean, if you go on his site, he will have it. And I remember going to, it was October the 4th. It's etched on my memory. We were at the Great Dickster Flower Show, and before we went to the day before, we went to Sissinghurst. And in the cottage garden at Sissinghurst, I had this aroma, and I thought, sweet peas, right? This is October, what's going on? I rounded the corner, and there was an obelisk completely covered in this orange sweet pea. And I can't remember the name of it, but it's an old-fashioned variety. And I couldn't, there wasn't anybody to ask or anything. And I don't know when they sowed that seed, but it occurred to me that that seed could probably have been sown as late as May. So that's an experiment. That's sort of a kind of Flomo experiment that I'd like to do this year. I have tried it before and it didn't work. Well, I think I left it too late. I tried to sow in June and I think that really was too late. So I think I might try doing that for May. But another old-fashioned variety that is very highly scented, of course, is Matucana.
Yes.
Which is the two tones of purple, which looks stunning with the orange as well.
Oh, you're giving me all kinds of ideas for the allotment, Alan.
And you're not buying more seeds.
Try and stop myself.
And then you see, Graham and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about the new banks on the edge of the cornfield, between the cornfield and the desert. And I said, the thing is, the desert. He said, well, the cornfield, I mean, the cornfield's going to be late this year because we're not going to get round to cultivating it until late. And when I say late, it could be April or even May. Which many people will think, well, what's going on? You're far too late. But we'll see. But I did have the inspiration of growing some sunflowers in the cornfield.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because I thought, not the great tall ones, the giant Russian one or anything like that, but some of the lower ones. I thought if you could do bold groups of sunflowers, I just thought, that would keep the show going longer and it'd be something for people to look at. And the other thing I suddenly thought was, of course, if you sow them at different times, you could have a longer period of sunflowers.
Yes.
So they're all ideas at the moment, but we'll see. But I mean, I wouldn't go to Chiltern Seeds for things like that. I would go to mole seed, because mole seed you can buy by weight, which is much more. If you want a large quantity of seed, it's much more economic to do it that way. And I've done the same with Phacelia tennisetifolium. You get giant packets of that. And don't forget, this is to everybody that's listening and watching, but Phacelia tennisetifolium is normally sold as a green manure. And it's got a very pretty sort of filigree green foliage. But if you leave it until the flowers open, they're like fluffy bluey mauve caterpillars. And we will always know when you're near a patch, even if you don't see them, because you'll hear the hum of the bees. They are absolutely covered with bees. So it's just a wonderful thing. It's a good enough plant to go in the flower garden. It doesn't look at all weedy. And I just think that, everybody should do their little bit to help the insect world. And that's going to be my push for this year. And that's Phacelia tennisetifolium.
That's a great one. Yeah, I definitely should grow that again. I haven't had it for a few years. Actually, I haven't had it in this garden. I've only had it at my mum's garden. So
yeah,
a timely reminder as I.
Well, the other thing is, of course, once you get it, you're liable to find self-sown seedlings, because it does not nuisance, but enough to provide you with future years, if you like.
And isn't that the exciting thing about a new year, is that you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the weather is going to throw at you. You don't know what seedlings are going to turn up.
No.
Very exciting. That's always, I think, my favorite thing about gardening, seeing what's going to happen. What's Mother Nature going to do? Well,
exactly. And Mother Nature's done some hairy things with our echiums, Echium pinenana, of course. They have suffered quite badly, but I think that lots of them may recover. And of course, if the frost has got into the crown, it may distort the way the crown grows. So it could even, you get split flower stems instead of the one big one, and stuff like that can happen. So, we'll see. It's all interesting. It's all another page in the book of life.
Watch this space. We will, of course, be along to cover whatever is happening in the world and talk about the plants that are flourishing, the plants that maybe aren't flourishing, apart from that little brief break probably around March. But, we'll see. We'll see what the year has in
Well,
store.
one little piece of optimism I can give you is I'd sown some honesty seeds, Corfu Blue, and I sowed them in the greenhouse in trays. I took one tray and I pricked them all out, and I left them out on the first night of that hard frost. And bearing in mind they come out of a greenhouse, I went up the next morning and I looked at them. They all laid there on the sides, looking, and I thought, well, I better get rid of those and redo the pots with another lot. I didn't. The next morning, later on that day, they'd popped up. They're still there. They're still outside, and they're looking fantastic. So, they weren't hardened off, and suddenly they got hit by a hard frost. Gosh, what a tough little blighter that one is.
That's worth knowing. So think about gardening, you live and learn. I just realised that we are only like a month away from your snowdrop day, and we always forget to love these sorts of things. Can you remember the date of it?
Yes, it's Sunday, February the 5th, 10 a.m.
Well, I'll try and be there. If you see a big person waddling around, that'll be me.
And I'll be running behind with a collapsible stool if she needs one.
Better be a big stool.
A bit strong one, don't worry.
Well, thank you for joining us for this first little foray into the world of plants for 2023. There'll be many more of them, but until next time, happy gardening.
Happy gardening, everybody. Nice to see you. Got it.
Hello. Oh, look at your
Hello,
jumper.
Oh,
I like that.
secret. M&S ladies. You changed your layout.
Well, the Christmas tree's still over there.
What's the deal? What's happened here?
Oh, what's happened? What have you done?
I don't know.
Have you lost me? I'm still here. Oh, now you've gone quiet. So, if you've got me on your screen, over on the bottom left, I think you can click on the microphone and that might unmute you.
I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Hey, good to go.
Can you see me? Am I back?
It's called a spud. It's like a miniature tray, spade blade.
Thank you so much for my brush. I must get my brush.
Well, I have to. Oh.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm here. I'm only here. It's over in the corner by the plant.
I have to say that. Well, hang on a minute. If you can do that, I can do that.